G'day everybody, Sean from Bourbon Brothers here. I hope you're well. Today, really excited because for the first time we're featuring 3 whiskies from the very same distillery in our subscriber box this month. We're talking about the amazing KOVAL Distillery out of Chicago, Illinois. You know, there hadn't been a distillery in Chicago since Prohibition. They're certified both organic and kosher, and KOVAL creates award-winning whiskies, brandies, liqueurs in their distillery in Chicago's North Side. KOVAL's founders, Sonat and Robert Birnecker, left academic careers to found the distillery, aiming to bring distilling traditions and techniques of Robert's Austrian grandfather to America, which is just awesome. So today I'm so pleased to be joined by the founder and president of KOVAL Distillery, Dr Sonat Birnecker and Chelsea Lovett, marketing manager extraordinaire who covers off our Australian market. It's brilliant. So prior to opening KOVAL Distillery, one of the largest fully independent and woman-owned craft distilleries in the US, Dr. Sonat spent over a decade as a full professor in both the United States and Germany. In 2008, she gave up tenure in hopes of a different quality of life, one that would afford the opportunity for her to work with her husband, give up commuting, and return to the city she loved, Chicago, which is just an amazing city. If you haven't been there, get there. It's absolutely brilliant. As owner and president of KOVAL, she's spearheaded product development, distribution, marketing, turning her family business into an international presence with availability in over 55 export markets. In light of the COVID-19 health crisis, she led KOVAL's transition into producing much needed hand sanitizer for those in the front lines, including medical organizations, first responders, and community non-profits. Sonat is involved in a number of philanthropic organizations and was named Illinois Business Person of the Year by the National Small Business Association. Is a federally appointed member of the Illinois District Export Council and has been inducted into the Disciples Escoffier. So that is just an amazing food and beverage organization out of France. And I guess, Sonat, you'd have a green sash from that.
I do. I have a green sash, yes.
That's
and it has sort of a
cool
copper measuring cup on it. It's great.
That's awesome. So with that, welcome Sonat and welcome Chelsea. Thank you for taking so much time to talk to Bourbon Brothers. You're going to be heading out to all of our subscribers and all of our followers out there, and they'll be using this as they taste your whiskies in their February boxes. So it's very cool, and I certainly appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
Such a pleasure to be with you. We love it.
That's awesome. So, Sonat, could you talk to me a little bit about what it took to get the first distillery opened in Chicago since Prohibition? Because you had to get some laws changed, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It was interesting because actually, not just since Prohibition, but since the mid 1800s, there really hadn't been a distillery in Chicago. Chicago is very much a distribution town, but not that much a distilling town, or at least not a legal distilling town. I'm sure there were people doing something during Prohibition in their homes, but with that, there wasn't an infrastructure. There weren't any laws on the books that would allow it. And so when we got started, I realized that there were a lot of impediments for doing good business. We weren't able to invite anybody in to do tours. We couldn't have a retail shop. We couldn't let anybody taste anything. It was all illegal. So I had to get the laws changed to create a craft distiller's license that really would allow for all the kinds of things that a craft distillery really relies on, which is reaching out to the people and inviting them in. Exactly. So that became possible. It took about a year to make that happen. So we were distilling for at least a year in the beginning without being able to invite anybody in, actually almost 2 years. And so it was quite amusing. The whole front of the distillery had like little squishy mats right by the windows and like a slide and a library. And people would walk by the distillery and see that and then knock on the door and say that they wanted to sign their kids up. And they would say, well, for what? We're a distillery. And they would say, well, it looks like a daycare center. It looks like a play place. And I said, no, we're just making whiskey, but we have our kids with us. But as soon as we got the laws changed, that whole front window area became the store. So my kids had to move to a different area, but it was fun.
That's so cool. Because what I remember from my journeys in Chicago is very much a beer city. In there when I was there. So I think it's just interesting and very, very cool for us whiskey lovers, that you've been able to lead this little revolution is going, because I know there are other craft distillers that have since sort of piggybacked on the work that you put in earlier, and there's producing some really interesting stuff there.
Oh, it's been great. I mean, and Chicago's really a drinking city. We like our beer, there are a lot of people, a lot of wine bars as well. And now there are really, truly a lot of distilleries in the Chicagoland area, but all over the Midwest. And when we started, we also started consulting, because Robert comes from 3 generations of craft distillers. So we knew how to distill. And we also knew how to set up a distillery and change laws and do all of these things. So people started reaching out to us all the time, wanting to figure out how to do this themselves. And actually, since we did that, we've now educated about 3,500 people in how to get a distillery started. They've come from all over the world, including Australia. We've also set up over 200 distilleries for others all over the world, including, the largest distillery in Uganda, the first distillery in Jerusalem, distilleries all the way where you see the Northern Lights all the time in Scandinavia, to, really just about a lot of places in the world. So it's been exciting.
You're doing great work for the whiskey community, and I appreciate it, because
we love it.
The more we can get this out there, the more we can get people talking about the amazing world that is whiskey and distilled spirits is really, really cool. So the fact that and you're reached into Australia, and can you talk about that experience? I know it was your husband who went over, but how did that come about with the Australian connection?
There are a few different connections we had in Australia, in which, similarly to so many of these other distiller hopefuls, they reached out to us. They wanted to come to our workshops. They wanted to learn how to get things going and started. Sometimes they reach out to us with, formulation questions or distilling questions, mashing questions. And sometimes they want us to set them up from start to finish, turnkey solution, get all their equipment, teach them how to use it. And so we've done that as well. And it's been a really rewarding experience, because we love, as you said, seeing so many other great distilleries open up. We feel that it's great for the industry. It allows for a lot of variety, and it keeps things fun, and really we're in the fun business and the happy business and the celebration business. And the more people that are making things, locally is great. And then the more people have access to things from all over the world that are unique and different, that's also great. So it really provides a level of richness to the industry.
That's awesome. So on to KOVAL a little bit. So what I know about the distillery is probably what you call a very grain forward distiller. The grains are really at the heart of what you do, and heart's probably a really good word to use when you're doing there. Can you just touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, as I said, Robert comes from 3 generations of distillers in Austria, and what they're distilling is primarily fruit. And so when you're making a fruit brandy in Austria or in Switzerland or in Germany or France, you're really going to only use the heart cut of the distillate. It's the fillet of what comes off the still. So when you know about distilling, obviously it comes off in 3 parts: the heads, the hearts, the tails. Hopefully no one uses the heads, because they will make it go blind and crazy. And then you have the heart cut, which is like the pure ethanol, that's where you get the biggest concentration of flavor and of the essence of whatever it is you're distilling. And then the tails, the long ends, they have more fusel oils in them. They have other chemical compounds in them, similar to what you might find in vinegar, as the alcohol content goes down. And they're not, bad in the same sense as the heads are. They just have different flavors and can sort of muddy the hearts if you combine them.
I kind of found when I've been at distilleries and talked about the tails, I'd almost get like a wet dog smell from the tail side of things. Is that right?
You do. Yeah, you definitely get a wet dog smell, but it mellows over time. So, the people that do like to combine the hearts and some of the tails, it just creates a different kind of product. You
probably have to age it much longer.
You definitely
mellow that flavor.
Definitely need to age it. Yes. But, we don't use it. That's one of the signature elements of our style. It's a little bit similar to what you see going on in Japan. And so we have very, very tight heart cuts. And because of that, it's very, very smooth, even at higher proofs. I know we're going to taste some products that are of a higher proof than the traditional 40% alcohol by volume. And that sort of smoothness, that clean sort of flavor is because of only using this heart cut of the distillate. We don't let anything go to waste though. So we take our tails, we redistill them. But the problem is when you redistill the tails, you're stripping away the flavor and aroma, and you're not going to use that for whiskey ever. You do get hearts again, but they are really truly stripped of all of its essence, which is perfect for vodka. So,
correct.
So we because we make a lot of different products, we're able to repurpose and then focus our whiskeys on just the best part.
And you mill your own grain and things like that, is it?
We sure do. We can trace every bottle back to the field on which the grain was grown. So we even work with a number of farmers locally, and they grow grains for us. And it's really nice to know where everything is coming from, and to make sure that it also has sort of the terroir. It's also part of the Midwest. So you're really tasting Illinois. When you try our bourbon, you're tasting Illinois. That's where the corn comes from. And we're part of the bread belt in the Midwest. And it's nice to have the grain that comes from this truly rich soil that is in the Midwest, that is known for making, or producing fabulous grain.
Right. So onto your bottles. So when you were coming up and looking at your designs and things like that, can you talk to me a bit about the design, bottle and label?
Sure.
And because it's unique in its simplicity, and I really enjoy the simplicity of it. The label's small, you focus on the actual juice as well.
Right. Absolutely. We wanted to, exactly as you said, we wanted it to be simple. We wanted it to be clear and clean, like what is in the bottle. For example, a lot of our spirits are also just the one grain, so for our rye, it's just 100% rye.
Yeah.
We want everything to be just clear and convey what it is, and also just to be tidy. We like it to be neat and clean, and that's just sort of part of our style as well. And the labels were done by my sister, so it's very much a family business.
So amazing.
And nice to work with family.
It is. And obviously these are all single barrel products. So on each bottle, and try and get that up there, you can see the specific barrel that it came from. It can all be traced back in there. Now, I remember my first experience at KOVAL, these were handwritten on there.
Yes, they were. We've gotten a little bigger.
Right.
So now they're not necessarily handwritten, but
I still remember looking at it, like, that's so cool. It's all handwritten and on there, in there, but I absolutely understand the growth, and that's probably not practical right now. So how many barrels are you turning out just in the bourbon space?
Oh boy, a lot. I would say that we're doing every year at least around 70,000 gallons of product. And it's increasing over time. We are, however, somewhat limited. So as we grow, because we're a craft distillery, we're only allowed to produce 100,000 gallons. So that's as far as we can go. So really we're staying craft, we're staying, within these parameters, we're staying independent. These are all things that are important to us. And we feel that allows us to, reach those that are interested in our products, but we don't necessarily, want to have everything everywhere. There are people that really care about these kinds of products, and those are the ones that we're trying to find.
That's awesome. So before we get on to, and we'll have a tasting here in a moment, what are some of the other products you guys are working and developing that you're really kind of proud of and enjoy, and like to sort of share that what's coming?
Sure. Well, gin is another side of the business. And we love our gins and are very proud of them. And those actually have very simple but ornate, labels. I don't know if you've seen them. So that's something that we're excited about as well. And not too long ago, we came out with the Cranberry Gin Liqueur, which is fun. But if we're talking just whiskey, we are very excited about, There are a number of things in the works, some fun collaborative projects, and you mentioned beer. So we've done some collaborative projects with certain breweries, which at this point will remain nameless, but where we distilled some beer and have been aging it for a number of years.
Oh,
which
that's
is
so
going to be
cool.
really fun. Yeah, fun and exciting. And then we're working on a number of different finishes for whiskey using different kinds of barrels, which is something else that people will be seeing at some point in the future. And, this year's really been about growth for us. We've added another still, earlier in the pandemic, so to speak, we added other fermentation tanks, another mash tank. So really the last 2 years have been about growth. And I think that through this growth, we're going to have a lot more flexibility to create some other really fun, unique kinds of products. And you'll probably see a single malt in the not too distant future.
Hello. That's very, very exciting. Talk to me about your stills. What style do you use and where do they come from?
They come from Germany. We use a Kota still. They're hybrid stills, which means we have a lot of flexibility. We have 2 columns as well as a pot. And what's great about that is that instead of having to double pot distill, where we have to, take it out and put it back in order to get the correct proof for different kinds of whiskeys, we're able to adjust the column to serve as sort of a second distillation to allow us the amount of rectification we need for every product. So it's a fabulous system, but it gets better because we also have it completely hooked up to sensors and automation panel. And while we do all the cuts, of course, still by hand, go and taste and smell, at the same time, we are alerted as to when we might want to do that based on the cuts that we want. As I said, we like very tight heart cuts. And so it also, what's great about that is these sensors allow us to know if there's any sort of shift or change in temperature or flow rate inside the still. So we're never flying blind. So if something is slightly off, we're able to immediately adjust it, which allows us to have a product that is consistent. So while you may get slight variations with the barrel, and obviously any barrel that ends up having like a much bigger variation gets pulled out for something different, like a special barrel program or something, because we do want to have, although there's single barrel, we want people to be able to go back and have it taste within that range that they love and appreciate and hope for. And having this level of control over this distillation process allows us to create a very consistent, clean product every time.
So really it's that marriage of science, technology, and the art of distilling that allows you to create a consistent single barrel product.
Yes, absolutely. It's great. And, obviously there's going to be some differences with the barrels, which is why, we have to then taste all of the barrels and then we make sure that the flavor profile that we're looking for is reached before it's released. And you never know, if we have like a summer where it's like 110 degrees for like 2 weeks, there may be a difference in some of the barrels that's a little more noticeable. And then those get pulled for other programs. So that way we get to keep the flavor profile we want in the main line consistently.
Awesome. Well, I think it's time we should probably crack and have a taste. And Chelsea, you're going to be leading us through the tasting?
Yes, absolutely. I can't wait.
All right. I'll hand the floor to you and lead away for us.
That sounds great. I think we're going to start with our millet.
Yeah.
That's what we should do first. This is a single grain product as opposed to the bourbon, which has 2 grains, and the 4 grain, which of course is comprised of 4. Let's go ahead and pour a little dram. Why not?
While we're going there, can you actually talk to me about the millet grain? Because it's absolutely fascinating. Because it's not something you typically associate with whiskey in there. And I know it's a popular grain in sort of Asia and Africa. And I think I knew it from birdseed, which is it's sort of mixed into there. So it's a fascinating grain. How did you think we're going to make 100% millet whiskey here?
Sure. I mean, Sonat is here and can answer on this, but I know as far as just from talking to Robert often, he began experimenting with a variety of grains that were readily available to him in the Midwest when he switched over from distilling fruit in making brandy to making whiskey, from sorghum to buckwheat to spelt, millet being one, oat as well. And he just really enjoyed the way that millet was, one, different. Flavor profile wise, it was fabulous. It was wonderful to work with. They've described it as once it's being distilled like a vanilla frosting. So it was easy to work with as opposed to oat, which scorches, or rye that's super sticky. But it's also a regenerative crop, which is important to what Sonat and Robert's beliefs are in the facility. And running KOVAL, which is utilizing something that is helpful in the environment. And again, just doing something a little bit different, being that just forging ahead and doing something different, which is in the namesake of KOVAL itself. I actually have here a little, you can see the corn, of course. So this is a depiction of our mash bill of our bourbon, but this going to be a little bit of millet and a little bit of corn, which we'll be tasting, but you can see now what millet looks like. Sure, it looks like a birdseed. They love it. But as cows love corn, we can all distill it and enjoy it together as whiskey. I love it. All right. So here we are with the KOVAL Millet. So yeah, we poured ourselves a glass. We can go ahead and nose this. This is 80 proof or 40% ABV. As you can tell, just from the nose, it is a very clean whiskey. Again, as Sonat was mentioning, this is one of the signature noses in the technique that you'll get as we walk through the lineup. Very clean, very bright. What's unusual about it is there's a nuttiness.
There is. It really is.
It's a lot of vanilla. It's just so unique. You can't compare it to something else. Oftentimes people ask, what does this taste like? This is an item that you cannot compare to anything. It's its own.
I've actually found it almost a bit of a polarizing whiskey with my friends that I drink with. So when I said we're featuring KOVAL and I want to get your thoughts on it as I'm sort of preparing for a month's whiskey, I have a group of friends that we do it. And I reckon I had probably 70% going, this is amazing. Why haven't I tried this before? And the other 30 were like, probably not for me. And because it is just a different whiskey, and it's I really enjoy it. I love the nose and I love the finish on this whiskey as well. So, but I just found it's a bit different, and it does. I think it's almost that you're going to love it, or you're going to go maybe not for me with this one. And I'm on the love it camp.
It's not really a cigar whiskey necessarily.
No.
It's sort of like a light whiskey in a way. It's very drinkable. Almost you could have it with cake and cookies.
That's an idea.
There you go.
It's true. The lineup that KOVAL is distilling really allows any whiskey drinker the opportunity to find one grain that they really like, that maybe in other portfolios would be muddied because the focus is on the aging process itself, or there is a malted grain in the mash. That's something that none of these whiskeys have. We're not using any malted barley to kickstart the fermentation process. We're using an alpha amylase. So again, it really is 100% millet. The bourbon that we will be tasting next will be 49% millet, 51% corn, which is the barely, it is the legal requisite, but it is
you've
barely
scraped in
legal.
for the bourbon definition.
Well, and how appropriate coming from Chicago, just being a barely legal bourbon.
Right.
So as I mentioned, 49 millet, 51 corn. This is now 47% ABV. What is fabulous about that is that we are teetoing that line, doing something a little different. As Sonat mentioned earlier, we are making a bourbon in Illinois that tastes like the Midwest. So when you're tasting it in Australia, you're really getting a true sense of a different terroir coming from the States. Most bourbons I'm certain that you're drinking are coming from Kentucky, right?
It's either Kentucky or MGP, so typically.
Correct, and we are neither. So this is just something that is a little bit different. The tasting notes on this, and pardon me, I didn't have the chance to slug back the full millet pour I had. So the bourbon on this, the nose is again clean and bright, but you'll get much more caramel notes on this.
Yeah, it's more of a typical bourbon nose on there. You do get the caramel coming through much stronger than on that millet, which is just an interesting nose. But this one has more of those typical bourbon notes on it.
You're getting more of as you can imagine, because it's 51% corn, the traditional corn notes as well. But what I like about it is it's a refined bourbon, since it is only 51 corn, 49 millet. Corn is usually what really packs that heat as far as the flavor profile goes. And again, no malted barley. So it really is a very smooth drinking experience. I get more wood on this than any other product in the Cobalt portfolio.
Yeah, and the extra proof is good there. I think I enjoy that little bit of heat and the kick that comes through. It's a nice long finish on it, and nice, it plays across the different areas of your palate too. So
the millet has a drier finish, a lighter. It should be, again, it's that singular expression as opposed to the dual mash bill. I have a prop. I enjoy a prop. This is what it's a smaller version of the stave that we are aging in. This is everything that we're aging, or at least everything that you're tasting. I can be certain saying that it probably came from the barrel mill, which is in Minnesota. We're using 30-gallon casks. They're char number 3, which is what this is, which is the standard bourbon char number 3, the alligator char.
Yep.
This is what you'll be tasting. Or rather what all these whiskeys that you're tasting would have been aged in. So that is the bourbon. I don't mean to fly through this section. I'm happy to
No. I'm just enjoying it. I'm just in my little world, enjoying some Cobalt. Good.
And the last expression that your friends will be getting in their subscription box will be the KOVAL 4-grain, which is the most complex of the line, as it should be, the 4 grains as opposed to 2 or 1. Unusual here, there's not many 4 grains on the market, or any market. Those that are out there typically have a high content of corn in them, or at least a large portion of corn in them. There's absolutely no corn in this. There is malted barley in this, but that is for the grain itself. That has nothing to do with the fermentation process. And this is not a blended whiskey. All of these grains have been measured out, milled together, distilled together.
Right.
So from start to finish, this is really a 4-grain whiskey. The grains are going to be oat, wheat, rye, and malted barley, a higher percentage of the oat and malted barley. So the rye really just gives a nice spice and smoothness to it. The wheat, I believe, attributes a lot of the fruit notes to it.
Yeah, it's picking up the banana type.
Yes, the nose is my favorite. It's a bananas foster, or I'm not sure if you're familiar with runts, but the little banana-shaped runt. I
do. I'm not sure our subscribers are, but I certainly am.
Very much so. Dusted cocoa on this. The malted barley really elongates the finish. This is one of my favorite whiskeys out of the line, really in general, out of all whiskeys, because it's a fun whiskey. And I don't mean to, not make it into something as fabulous as it is, but it's fun to me, being a little bit of a whiskey nerd myself. You can't really tell what grain is doing what.
No, it's interesting. And that initial mouth hit, so I really enjoy the nose, but that initial mouth hit, it's probably a little bit more, I don't want to say oily is the wrong word, but it's a much fuller kind of mouthy initial, and then as it hits you, that complex palate really comes through, and you're getting pops sort of left, right, and center on it coming through there,
yes.
and that is a nice finish too.
Very viscous up front. The oat is a
viscous
very
was the word that I was stumbling
full,
for. Thank you.
but it's a very full mouth experience. The oat, it's very creamy, very bold, and again, there's higher percentages of oat in this. And it has a wonderful beginning, middle, and end. This is my journey whiskey when it comes to KOVAL. There's a lot happening. And that's, again, why I say that it's fun, because you can't necessarily say, oh, this is what's, making it do this or X, Y, and Z. But it's a wonderful drinking experience. It's something to have a conversation like we're doing now.
Unbelievable. Look, those three, I'm a fan. They certainly always have a place on my shelf, and something that I enjoy talking about, and it's what we really enjoy doing, and what we're trying to bring to the Australian market is the stories behind the whiskies and the bourbons that we feature, and you guys have such an amazing story and something to be incredibly proud of, and the chance that you took, Sonat, back in 2008 to leave tenure, because I know how bloody hard that is to achieve in the first place from from my wife's experience, certainly not mine. I'm not that smart, but
Sure.
And to take that risk and say, look, we're going to go out and do this and give something a shot, and you've changed the face of whiskey. I mean, it's such an amazing thing you've been able to achieve, and not just your own distillery, but the impact you've had on whiskey around the world, and obviously here in Australia too. And I think it's something that I'm sure you are incredibly proud of what you've achieved through there. And I know that our subscribers and our followers are just going to love the story behind it. And, Women in Whiskey is awesome. You're bringing something different. It's not just a crusty old bloke sitting there and telling us about this. It's something interesting and different, and it's so cool within there. So well done.
Thank you. Well, we're having a good time. And honestly, when you have fun and you enjoy what you're doing and you care about doing it incredibly well, then, it's wonderful to share it with others.
It really, really is. Look, guys, I've taken up enough of your time. I just want to say thank you so much for talking to this, little bourbon company in Melbourne and in Australia. And I know you're going to have a bunch of new fans come out of this, just not only for the excellent whiskey you guys are producing and sending here, but the story behind it and the people involved. And it's brilliant. And thank you so, so much.
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure, Sean. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yes, thank you so much.
Chelsea, thank you for your journey and taking us on a little journey through those. And again, thank you guys. Our subscribers are going to love this and love the story. And again, be proud of what you've achieved, because it's so bloody cool.
Thank you so much. Well, cheers to that.
Cheers, guys. Sonat is also involved in a number of philanthropic organisations and was named Illinois Business Person of the Year by the National Source. There we go. There's his bloopers. All right. Just give me 1 second.
Now that's a glass of water.
Yeah. This is actually from Outback Steakhouse.